Good evening, and I'm talking to you now to express my absolute and complete disgust with Labour's decision to suspend Chris Williamson, the MP, claiming that he's an anti-Semite because of what he said yesterday. Mr. Williamson, the Right Honourable Williamson, gave a speech saying that it was disgusting that the Labour Party, which is the most anti-racist party, should now become, in many people's minds, considered to be the most racist party. And he said it was all nonsense, and it was all nonsense, and he believed that Labour had given too much ground in the anti-Semitism, for claims of anti-Semitism. Now, he's been accused of defending anti-Semitism, and they're looking at him at a pattern of behaviour, and it's all nonsense. Mr. Williamson issued a statement last night saying that he rejects racism morally and ethically, and that he had always been anti-racist, and when he was young he had been a member of the Anti-Nazi League and had fought against anti-Semitism on the streets. And I dare say he's right. I've no doubt about that. And I've also no doubt that he's quite right in that he says that Labour has given too much to the anti-Semitism claims. In fact, many of them, the vast majority, I don't think should be described as claims of anti-Semitism, because they're not. They're anti-Semitism smears. Labour is a mass party. It's got 500,000 members. It's the largest socialist party in Europe. It is now larger than the Tories, which is a real turn of events. I mean, years ago the Tories were the biggest party in British politics by far, but they've shrunk, and that frightens a lot of people, just like Jeremy Corbyn frightens a lot of people. Now, since the years. In the 2 years or so since Corbyn's been, no, it's over that. In the years since Corbyn's been head of the Labour Party, he's been attacked as a communist, as a Trotskyite, and now he's an anti-Semite. He's none of those things. If you look at what the Labour Party stands for, it is definitely not Trotskyism. And the people who are saying it is are not Social Democrats either. The Labour Party manifesto actually looks very much like the traditional Labour manifesto, the Labour ideology of social democracy as formulated by Anthony Crosland. This is that you have a mixed economy, strong trade unions, and progressive taxation, along with social mobility. Thus, you can have the benefits of socialism without nationalising anything, or quite so much. There's still, the Labour still wanted the utilities to be nationalised, remains in the hands of the state, but that's it. And you get some of the benefits. And with the strong trade unions, they protect workers, and you get some of the benefits of workers of industrial democracy and workers' control without actually going down that route and getting, some part of which is very problematic. He deals with it in one of his books. Now, that was what Tony Crosland argued for. What's Labour manifestos? Well, you bring the railways and the water industries back into public ownership, along with parts of the grid. The railways back into public ownership, because privatisation is not working. You have strong trade unions so that people get rights at work from day one, and yes, and you put working people and employees on the boards, which goes further than standard social democracy. But this is what Labour was discussing in the early 70s. It was one of the policies of its radical wing, but it's a long way from communism or Trotskyism or any of that, or anything that the right is claiming. And as for anti-Semitism, but Jeremy Corbyn has got an unequalled record, I think, in Parliament of actually fighting anti-Semitism and standing up for the Jews. And there's a large section of the Jewish community which adamantly supports him. Jewish Voice for Labour, for one. He got criticised for spending the Passover Seder with Judas, because guess what? They're socialist Jews, the wrong type of Jews. Now the type of Jews and Jewish groups Jeremy Corbyn meets and supports, a lot of them are Jewish socialists. And you can see a tie there on the people attacking Corbyn for meeting them. They're more like the fascists. Because if you go back to the beginning of the last century, the 20th century, newspapers like the Daily Mail and the other extreme right-wing rags, and the British Brothers League at the time, were there telling the British public, don't let the Jews in. They're all socialists and communists and anarchists, and they'll bring down this country. Oh yes, and they'll throw millions out of work. Which is, that's the refrain of the fascists. And now we see the right-wing press, which in the case of the Daily Mail is a direct descendant. The Mail actually supported Hitler, for crying out loud, saying, "Oh, he's an anti-Semite. Why? He talks to socialist Jews." Really, it's disgusting that they hold such a or dare to articulate such racist rubbish. It really is. And then they turn up and say, "Oh, we're fighting anti-Semitism and he's the anti-Semite." No, he isn't. Now, there are two aspects to these anti-Semitism smears. One is the British establishment, industry and the media and politics trying to use anything to smear Jeremy Corbyn and his supporters. And that includes the centrists in the Labour Party. They're not centrists, they're Thatcherites. What do they stand for? Privatisation, including the privatisation of the NHS. They stand for, Tory welfare reform, rolling back the welfare state. And we've seen what that's doing. That's starving people. There is no question about it. People are starving. There's something like, 250,000 people using food banks? In holidays, 3.5 million children are expected to go hungry because their parents can't avoid food. Families are now stealing food from supermarkets, for God's sake, because of universal credit. And yet these MPs who support this, MPs that included Luciana Berger, Chris Leslie, Mike Gapes and Coffey, and all the rest who split up to form the Independents, and Tom Watson and John Mann, who are making these accusations of anti-Semitism, they all support that programme. That programme of privatising the NHS and depriving people of benefits. Why? Because they swallowed the Thatcherite Kool-Aid. Thatcherite, to them, private industry works, along with a minimal welfare state, which serves, well, God knows who it serves. And, so they're determined to push genuinely left-wing people, the genuine Labour Party supporters, out of the party by claiming that they're anti-Semites. And Corbyn also is obnoxious to the supporters of Israel, the Israel lobby, which unfortunately includes the Jewish establishment in this country, because he stands up for the Palestinians. And standing up for the Palestinians does not mean you hate Israel or you hate Jews, but to the Israel supporters it does, and they are determined to smear anyone who does this as an anti-Semite. And if you look at the people they've smeared as an anti-Semite, the charges are risible, like Jackie Walker. Jackie Walker was the vice chair of Momentum. She is a proud lady of colour and a Jew. She says that her mother was a black civil rights worker who had some Jewish blood. Her father was a Russian Jew. Now, Russian Jews really do know about anti-Semitism. I mean, Russia is perhaps one of the few countries where you can buy that vile forgery, the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, or at a kiosk, on the street. And, she was upset at the bombing of Gaza and at the way Israel treated the Palestinians. So they smeared her as an anti-Semite. And then we have Marc Wadsworth, black anti-racist activist. He worked with the Board of Deputies of British Jews in the 1990s to put forward stronger legislation to protect Jewish people after the BNP were beating them up in, I think, round about the Isle of Dogs or wherever it was, the Isle of Thanet, I can't remember. And then, because he had a dig at Ruth Smeeth then accuses him of anti-Semitism. The Labour Party know that's rubbish, but the press keeps on and keeps on. The Labour Party charged him with anti-Semitism, then dropped it, and then they said, oh, he's brought the Labour Party into disrepute. No, he hasn't. Smeeth brought the Labour Party into disrepute. Wadsworth did nothing of the sort. And it goes on like that. And there is a long, long list of other anti-racist opponents of anti-Semitism, some of whom are decent, secular and Torah-observant Jews who really have suffered anti-Semitism. And a lot of them are the children of Holocaust survivors, or they've lost people in the Holocaust. But because they support Corbyn, they're anti-Semites. Now this is a witch hunt. It's like this, it's like the Salem witch trials or the witch craze in 17th or 18th century Europe. It's another form of McCarthyism, as Jackie Walker has said, and it needs to stop. And it needs to stop now, because this is a glaring injustice. Sorry if this is a rant. Have a good evening.